And we're streaming. Remember, we turned our stream on.
Yeah.
So hopefully our stream on YouTube is fun.
Yeah. I think.
So do you have stuff on deck already today?
I actually don't. So we can go
Cool.
the OG method of actually scrolling Twitter, unless you have something.
I just read a piece that a friend had sent me this morning, but I'm not sure if it's. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in it, but it is. I'm not sure if it's going to be as fun as some of our normal stuff. Let me think. Let me see if I can find a link and we can see.
Well,
It
one
feels
thing
like the kind of thing. Okay.
if Cam is coming tomorrow, I haven't read his piece carefully
Oh
yet.
yeah. Oh,
So
let's
we
do
can
that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's perfect because I've been meaning to pick that one up.
Okay, let me put in a doc.
I also just saw, as I opened Twitter a minute ago, I saw Ryan Hoover tweeting Moore's Law for Everything, which is, I guess it was a blog post. Here it is. Looks like it's a Sam Altman blog post, Moore's Law for Everything. And looks like it's probably just recently published. And I'm curious, like the title sounds intriguing and sounds kind of like stuff I would expect would happen, and it's a nice, interesting, succinct framing.
Yeah.
It also, kind of seems to dovetail in part on the kind of YC for everything idea that we've discussed. I think Eric Thornburg was one of the first to tweet it years ago, but kind of YC for everything is an interesting kind of, create, communities for creativity to emerge. And then I think, Moore's Law for everything is also just kind of like something on the state of like, take this thing and apply it everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's one I'd probably like to check out. But I think we could start with the one you mentioned.
Cool.
Especially, so is Cam coming tomorrow, you said?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So.
Oh, there was also a Connor White Sullivan, the creator of Roam Research, had I thought it was like what did I see? I thought I saw something from him today that seemed, oh yeah. Oh, no, maybe this is a long time ago. Maybe he was just retweeting or somebody was retweeting. But he had this thread that was really good. I didn't really get through the whole thing, but it's from May 16th, 2019. So it's roughly, almost around the 2 years ago, anniversary of this. Basically, it says Twitter as a company is culturally oriented around now. Product reflects this. The Twitter users who search their own and other timelines for building webs of threads are hacking the platform to build a collaborative memory extension. Eventually, those users will migrate. So this seems like touches on themes that we've touched on before. And it was written 2 years ago, which I guess would have been near the start of Rome, or somewhere kind of early in the journey there. So anyway, we don't have to get to that now, but just queued up another one. Should we dive into the Google Docs link you sent?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Have you ever been to any World's Fair sites? Are you familiar with?
Well, I went to the US Open like every year, so that picture is very familiar to me, but I haven't been to
The US Open, the tennis match?
So this is in Queens, like this picture I think is in Flushing Meadows, isn't it?
Oh, I'm not. Are you on the original?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. That's Flushing Meadows? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's like the area where they hold a lot of fairs there still. They hold like maker fairs and things.
Oh, cool. Maker Fairs, not the branded Maker Fair.
What's the branded Maker Faire?
Oh, it's Tim O'Reilly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you been to? There's a thing that was. I think it may actually. Unfortunately, I think it was a fatality of Maker Faire. This is calling all makers. No, April 5th, 2021. Okay, so they're still doing it. I thought that maybe it had sort of. Yeah, that one. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool.
So that was from. I think Tim O'Reilly is, either, one of the instigators here or like deeply involved as an endorser or supporter somehow. But I think I think he published Make Magazine, which may have been part of the instigation, or actually Make.co, yeah, is this thing, Maker Magazine, Make Magazine. I don't see him listed on the team page. Sorry, this was just interesting because we were talking about Tim O'Reilly yesterday.
Yeah.
Now I have to pull up his Wikipedia. Let's see. Yeah, Maker Media. So he's on the board of directors of Maker Media. And Maker Media is an American magazine published by Make Community LLC, which focuses on DIY and do it with others projects. Maker Media abruptly shut down the bi-monthly magazine due to lack of financial resources. As of June 2019, it was reorganized and had since started publishing new quarterly issues based in San Francisco. I mean, I've been to their Maker Fairs, which were fun. They had them down at the San Mateo County Fairgrounds, and it's kind of just like a bunch of like warehouses of like cool projects. And they have like battle bots, and it's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my family has been to those. I've never been, but they do like a big one here in Queens, I think.
Okay, cool. So the picture you're saying is actually of a space. I guess it's a famous space where a big World's Fair was held. It says New York World's Fair was held.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So sorry, I got distracted. So back to the task at hand of reading this. Freshly griddled Belgian waffles. Yeah, actually, I was going to mention the Chicago World's Fair was 1893, and I know of a bunch of the buildings, like the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago is where we used to hold the state or not state, maybe the regional science fair competitions. It would be in the old buildings. They're kind of these, Romanesque architecture kind of, buildings from the World's Fair. It's big grounds, so probably similar to or relevant to kind of the Flushing Meadows area.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, the Ferris wheel too. I mean, when I read this, I'm immediately drawn to think about, the things we collectively watched on video today of watching like Starship, hit a landing and kind of everybody collectively cheers on the
Yeah,
internet when we watch those things. It feels like it's the same kind of energy.
yeah,
Not
totally.
to say we shouldn't, not to say we shouldn't have it in physical world, but I'm not even sure that Cameron is suggesting it. I think he's suggesting it a digital like experience, if I understand correctly.
Yeah,
What if every day you could like attend a World's Fair like thing with these like amazing curated experiences of like, here's like, the next SpaceX landing, or
yeah.
I'm curious to hear what he has in mind. I mean, I assume the basic idea of World's Fair is like highly inspirational and highly curated, and a little bit kind of science and future and technology progress oriented.
Yeah. Oh, Nadia's here.
Oh, Nadia, welcome.
Do you want to invite her?
Yeah, just did. I'm also setting you as co-host. Hey, Nadia.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just catching up on the chat. This looks like an exciting discussion. How are you guys?
We're
We're
good.
good. We're good.
We saw this article published this morning, so we started reading it.
Ooh.
Have you seen this one we have in the Google Docs? It's about it's time to build a new World's Fair.
Ooh. Super
Which,
interesting.
yeah, we don't know exactly where he's going with it, but it seems to be some combination of like, like a way to inspire people on what can be collectively achieved in kind of progress in technology. But we don't know exactly what the punchline is here. But we have him coming on tomorrow
Oh,
to
cool.
lunch break, so we'll get to, we're reading it today with the expectation that we can sort of ask some questions of him tomorrow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm just almost done going through this doc.
Yeah, let me just finish up mine too. I'm maybe a page away.
I'm going to skim and catch up.
When he says the intellectual equivalent of the Olympics, we can build a new world's stage, the intellectual equivalent of the Olympics.
Yeah,
I mean, this is somewhat tongue in cheek, but I think there's some kernel of truth, which is like, is the new world stage really TikTok? And maybe it's not an intellectual Olympics today, but it's more of a performative Olympics. But could such a thing is that what a world stage would look like today,
yeah.
rather than suggesting they get there necessarily? Hmm. Yeah, so it like a seems like a open. I mean, it's kind of an open call to inspire, but he doesn't propose too much about what exactly he has in mind. So I feel like it's one of these nice things where it's kind of this empty vessel. You can fill in your own details and dream up what a World's Fair might look like.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of has echoes of, at least when I read it, I'm like putting Pluto.video as an overlay into like that. That feels kind of like that collective World's Fair vibe could emerge there. But I don't know if that's maybe just too much of my own experience mapping onto what he's talking about there. Are there other experiences?
I was wondering if it was like I mean, it seems like he still is thinking like in the physical world, but I feel like today, like in some ways, like a Pluto like digital world is almost more relevant. But then can you recreate that like magic? Like I think that's the like question. I don't know. It's interesting.
Right.
Mishti, I interrupted.
Oh no. Yeah, I was thinking similarly, because a lot of what he's writing about kind of is about the magic and the intimacy of physical real world connection, and like demos in the real world. Like you walk into this massive structure, and I think like a lot of this piece is about, for me, if I zoom out, it's about how having people experience awe together is a really powerful force for like collective inspiration and innovation and invention that crosses a lot of boundaries, like of place and gender and race and like I don't know, whatever else. Like that's why the Olympics are such a powerful force every 4 years. But yeah, like how can you? A lot of those feelings seem. So how do you recreate like collective awe without being in the same physical place?
So you think he is suggesting it would be physical, or you're thinking he's suggesting it's virtual?
I don't really know what he's suggesting. I think he's just being like, it's important to have these like collective moments of amazement for the general public, which I agree with. But then my question is like, okay, so how do we translate that today? Are there like little local world fairs that cities should organize? Have some like overarching stitching together like online, or I'm curious what the vision is there.
It's interesting.
I like that.
Yeah, go ahead, DK.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
I was going to say it's interesting too to me. Like I'm sort of like thinking back. Like I think there's like the world fairs. There were also like like art exhibitions, like all these sorts of things where you think about like the Olympics. Like how do you bring people together, even if they have really different backgrounds, over like a common purpose or moment or place? And I think it's interesting because I think there are elements of this today, like pre-COVID times. There were expos, there are conferences, there are things that bring people together in the real world. There's also, TikTok, Twitter, like there are places, Pluto, in the digital world. And I'm trying to think, like, is it today that it's not sort of bringing people together in the same way? There's not that same magic there? Or are we like sort of like, rosy colored glasses at the past? And actually, like, there was also conflict and tension back then too, but we see it now as like, wow, it was this wondrous thing. You have these remnants like the Palace of Fine Arts. It seems so amazing. Because I don't know, I feel like today you have some elements of this, but I don't think there's that same. It's almost like Night Circus-esque, that like magical experience and place and in time. And I don't know that I can think of anything that like is exactly that.
Right. Well, we were talking just before you joined, I think, about how on the internet we collectively watch like the landing of a SpaceX shuttle, and we kind of collectively share it and experience that awe together. And it's imperfect in many ways, but it also explores new boundaries that the kind of physical world version didn't. But I do like, I'm intrigued by the idea, especially if there is a way to do it with more of a physical world component. I think it's like I think people would naturally be skeptical, be like, oh, well, digital is better. You can do it all online. Everybody can gather. Like, we know all the reasons that digital is, maybe, more interesting than physical. But I almost feel like when those situations occur, that's when it's interesting to like explore the dismissed. So, we've talked before about, how when everything is plentiful, sort of the move is to do something that's like scarce and sort of do something that, so the example being Dispo, which is, the plentiful pull to refresh Instagram feed, has like, stuff you could engage with all day. And people sometimes complain about that kind of experience of being never complete and always infinite. And then Dispo, on the other hand, is like, okay, it's 9 a.m. You do your stuff, you share your stuff, you consume what's there, and then you're done with your photo consumption thing. And I think it's a powerful differentiator to go against the expectation in that way. And I wonder if there's something in the physical world that Cameron is brewing up that may similarly like unite. Maybe it's like an online offline experience.
I wonder if there's something about just like tapping into like the things that are I mean, it's exactly that. Like, what is sort of like shortcomings today? What's missing? And I wonder if there's something interested in like the sort of post-pandemic world where folks have been very isolated. It has been very digital, where it's sort of playing into like all of your senses.
Yeah.
Like looking at some of the examples of like, you're eating your, Beyond, beef burger, hot dog or whatever, and you're in line for the Hyperloop. And it's almost like very much like that sensory overload that I think was such a nostalgic thing for a long time and now is totally missing. And like, I wonder if there's something there that's sort of unique and delightful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to focus on, because I think the end of the pandemic is going to be a moment for like a lot of behavior change, and a lot of people to like would be willing to explore different behaviors that wouldn't have been comfortable or that they wouldn't have. There's like lots of pent up energy. So I wonder, I mean, also some of this is maybe within the context. I'd be curious because you're sort of looking at some new ideas and trying to decide where you're going to spend your time. Do categories of like offline stuff come into your kind of your idea space much, or is that something that you spent time with or would think about spending time with or kind of opposed to?
No, it's interesting. I haven't thought about it as much, like online versus offline time. I think in part because I get really excited about online, but I think exactly what you said around like time and it almost becoming a commodity is something that like I've noticed. I've just been reading a lot recently. And I think there's been sort of this interesting trend across like different topics I've dug into around how like in some ways like optimizing for engagement, which like makes a lot of sense. And I think is something, for a lot of apps, like it's a key metric. Do people find value? You want more engagement. But then taken to an extreme, it's like led to people spending crazy amounts of time, like polarizing content, doubling down on things that are like, it's almost like the ice cream bowl where it's like you're attracted to it, you like want to keep eating it, but it's like not good for you.
Right.
So I think there's something there that I've just been thinking about, less like online, offline, and more just like in the abstract, which is like, how do you create value for people when at sort of extremes, like the thing that people like want to actually like might be bad past a certain point. Or is it bad? I don't know. But that's something that I've struggled with because I think I've always thought about like, how do you create value and meaning? And I think for a lot of like, consumer technology, there's sort of this thing where we're at this point where I kind of think a lot of it has gone really far and it's like, it's fun, but is it going to be sustainable? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to comment on the specifics of like the sustainability because I think the systems are, they're well optimized because they work.
Right.
But if you're looking at new spaces, I think the opportunity in the new is to do the thing that is unexpected. So if you find yourself like, okay, so Facebook was successful and Instagram was successful, and then everybody would say, oh, we're building social apps, and they would basically like take like, some new media format, and they would put a like button in a comment box, and they'd be like, look, we're social. We're the social version of Media X. And it's almost like it's too tired. It's not unexpected. It's almost like too up the middle to actually work. Like it's almost like it obviously won't work because it it is like too up the middle. Like it's like an extension of the thing that's working rather than like a different thing. And I think we see and hear popular narratives of things that are problematic. So it's like you rewind the clock to like 10 years ago, everybody was like, oh, like privacy on Facebook is so hard, and you've got like these settings and you can switch for friends or friends of friends and all these different things. And it's like, oh, I need to control my privacy life on Facebook, and Facebook never solved that. Snap didn't build better privacy settings. They just built a product which gives people a very different relationship with privacy. Right. And so I think that was kind of the magic, a large part of the magic of Snap was that it's actually like an answer to a question that everybody was asking, but it was like an unexpected answer. It wasn't like another like button and a comment box, which operate like slightly differently. It's just like total reinvention, unexpected. And I think that Dispo has similar characteristics of being extremely unexpected, because it has like the bizarre, like, wait, I can only do it at 9 a.m. or like, that's the only time that makes sense really to do, is like take photos and consume, but you don't just like refresh all day. But that's actually like an answer to the question that everybody's asking. So I almost might propose or challenge to like, what are the questions that you hear everybody asking that that, and you don't have to have an answer to them, but like, what are the questions people are asking that you're interested in?
Yeah.
And then maybe some sort of brainstorm on like, what are the non-obvious approaches to this? Like, just get like really out of the comfort zone. Like, what are non-obvious ways to answer these questions?
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we were looking at that spreadsheet of yours with like problems that you listed that you personally feel frustrated with. Are there?
It feels like a Zen garden almost, where I'm like going into like concentric circles, or I'm like, all right, like we're at a different level of exploring. Like there's themes that I keep coming back to, but in different ways. And I really like the idea of approaching it. What are the questions, and like, how would you approach this in like a really different way?
Like I mean, if you want it, I'll just pose, because I'm just trying to think in this framework.
Yeah.
Because we talked a little bit about like the interesting potential of offline experiences, and I think that offline experience thing may be there may be answers in the offline experiences that are like, they're answers to the questions of that the online experiences are creating. And so like the infinite wasting time online, you could go build something that helps people waste more time online, and and I mean, I'm saying that kind of trivially or joking. I think I wouldn't claim waste one way or the other. I think it's really there's like a lot of value in the way that people build relationships online. But if you are frustrated with the existing styles, instead of taking another riff on that, take something that's entirely an offline experience. Maybe it's actually newly empowered or enabled by online.
Right.
And actually, it doesn't feel anything like the existing, solutions to the service. But I think the energy that's pent up right now, everybody's saying like, okay, the whole world is just going to live in the metaverse and be on Zoom. That's kind of like the default assumption. And I think if you kind of say, no, actually, people want to get together, and there's new ways to get together based on stuff we know about online, or new, GPS or tools that could be built.
I really like that. I'm trying to like now think where I'm like, all right, like how would you approach it in like an unconventional or like unexpected way? And like, what are the things that are like the assumptions, I guess, that we have on like, this is what the world is like, and how do you sort of like invert those?
Like one that comes to mind, that just kind of coming out of pandemic, and this is one that Mishti's thought a lot about, but did you ever see this company Grub With Us?
No.
So there was this idea that was called Grub With Us, and it was a way to get like effectively strangers or loose connections together at a restaurant, almost like a 6 people buy a Groupon for a restaurant and meet each other, but they may have stuff in common, or they may have mutual friends, or they may have there's like some sort of reason for assembling, and then it could lead to dating or professional stuff, or whatever. There's not really like a explicit what it should lead to, but it's kind of, if you wanted to say something like, it could be something dating, it could be something local commerce, but it's getting people out of the house and into new situations. And Mishti explored this. I don't know, Mishti, if you want to share a little bit about kind of your thinking with Lettuce.
Oh yeah, well, I was always thinking about how the most organic way that people meet other people that they really connect with is like friends of friends, right? Like mutual friends.
Yeah.
Each other, like connections 1 degree separated. So one problem with like dating apps and like meetup.com or whatever, it's just like throws you in a pool of complete randomness, but you actually have like so much information embedded in your own network that exists already. Like if I met your 5 closest friends, I'm sure that I would get along very well with them. Like I don't really need to know anything else about them, right? So yeah, I was kind of thinking of this idea of like how to build, I don't know what it would be, but like some sort of physical meetup type service that would draw upon that network.
That's really cool. I think it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, DK. Sorry. No, I was just gonna say it's interesting because there's like a level of curation there that I think is like inherent in the network, and it's like tight ties versus like weaker ties, where like I think, for example, like Renko is like an amazing example where I'm like, anyone there I can almost bet that like I would love them. But if you take it like 1 degree further out, you're like, if I'm looking at like my Facebook friends of friends, like there are probably a lot of people that I wouldn't get along with or want to grab lunch with.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting because it's like, where does that like threshold fall on that sort of like social like degree of separation? And then like, how do you optimize for more of those like quality connections? And like, how do you create, and I think you're onto something interesting there. Like, how do you create like the means of relating with people that you might not meet, but like actually like you would really hit it off with, that have that sort of like friend of friend or, network like strong ties. I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I feel like that concept is just something that you could use for anything. Like, it doesn't have to be physical meetups, but just like use the curation that's inherent in people's existing networks and trust. Like, we've talked about this as an overlay to Twitter. Like, what if you could just see Twitter, but it would be just like the likes of a couple people that you follow or something, like just like build out from the consumer like one layer at a time and then stop the second ring almost.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know it's like probably over discussed, but I feel like with Clubhouse, there's a little bit of that. They were like very aggressive, I think, on like who to follow. And I saw like, tweets from people like, oh, like I don't want to follow my exes on Clubhouse. Like, no, thank you, whatever. But I think it's interesting too, because like I think on the flip side, like if you have really high quality folks that you follow, like even if it's some of more of those like casual connections, like I think there's something really interesting there in terms of like the types of conversations that you emerge. And there is sort of that like, and it's almost like the in real life, like, stumbled upon where you're at a coffee shop and you run into, your coworker on a coffee walk you haven't met yet, but they're great also. And you just chit chat and you're like, oh, this is nice. Like, this is kind of a nice way to like meet new people. But it's interesting. It's like the flip where it's like, that's like the digital taking on some elements of like what we used to do in the real world. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if he wanted to experiment with this. I almost feel like step one is actually just do non-tech platform-like things and see, try to understand the dynamics better and almost like build the seed of a brand and community with zero platform. Maybe it's some combination of Airtable with, I don't know, Eventbrite or, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's some set of like things that you could imagine could formulate into a proper platform, but like day 1 through 90 or 180 or something, you're like making the thing work and observing in a low structure environment what kinds of behaviors organically emerge, and then you figure out if and which of those behaviors you want to more want to formalize as part of a platform. Versus I think a lot of people end up building platform too soon, formalizing too many ideas, and then it's like too sticky and hard to undo. And working with existing tools helps a lot, I think.
Right. That's kind of a repeated theme that's come up whenever we talk about like company startup stuff. I feel like it's just like just use Google Docs and like figure something out, or like Google Sheets and text people, and like, I don't know, don't get too carried away trying to formalize structure too soon. I was actually curious about how with South Park Commons, the sorts of discussions that you're having with people who are in similar headspaces, like how are people starting to think about and iterate on ideas, or like even think about what spaces they're interested in, and are you kind of seeing themes for like the stack of tools that people use or might want to use to like test ideas in a lightweight way?
It's a good question. I think it's been interesting because people are approaching it really differently, but I think there's like underlying almost like sentiments of like everyone has, I think, similar like excitement, similar nervousness, like similar like, you know, am I doing this fast enough? Am I doing it right? Like, you know, is this a good idea or not? Like, is this a good space or not? But I think how people are actually like tackling it, it's like radically different from like person or like founder group to founder group, which I think is like really cool to see, because it's also like really different from like how I might, you know, how I am approaching it or like might approach it. And I think you have sort of really different personalities, or for some folks, like they're really like, they are builders and they love building and engineering. And like, that's the place where they are energized starting. There are other folks where there's like a problem or a space that they either through, you know, life or just their interests are like really passionate about and are sort of wanting to like dig into. I think there are folks that are sort of closer to like, you know, my end of the spectrum, where there's a few things that they might be curious about. They might like deep dive on one and then sort of surface and then like deep dive on another and sort of decide, you know, do I feel like there could be a there? How much do I want to engage or not engage? So it's really an interesting thing to see, to be honest, because everyone is doing it differently. But I think that like the underlying like hopes and fears and like desires are very similar, and it's a really sharp group of people. So it's been really, really cool just to like be able to engage with folks who have really, really different processes.
Are there any thematic observations that you feel like you've come away with kind of maybe surprised? Because I could say that, like, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago everybody's working on mobile apps. Basically, like, nobody's working on mobile apps now. Now everybody's working on like something for teams. Like, it's like a tool to help your teams communicate better in way X, Y, or Z. And that almost like building mobile apps is kind of like a very rare thing. Like, some people do it, but feels rare. And then building for teams is the new hot thing for the last few years. But everything is that. Nobody builds social networking tools or mobile apps or anything anymore. So my question is, like, is there any of this like online offline thing happening? Is that like is there any theme around that, or are there themes around, like, I don't know, verticalization, deep verticalization of SaaS tools that would have otherwise been built for teams, or like any of those kinds of themes that you see emerging?
I think like kind of all of the above, which is interesting with different groups. Like I think one sort of thing that I think has been surprising to me is it's felt like, and maybe this is like oversimplifying it, but bear with me. Like, I think it's felt like in the past, like there's been really clear sort of like phases of like technology shift that has led to like, this is like the time of mobile. Like, this is the time of like, the internet. This is the time of this thing. And I think what's sort of surprising, but also really cool right now, is it feels like there's a lot of things that are like either continuing to have their moment or starting to have their moment. And so in some ways, like, there are all these things that are like exciting and potentially game changing, from autonomous to AI to like still sort of mobile to the like dev-steamer, prosumer like tools,
right.
and to like enabling remote. And so I think it's interesting because people have sort of taken hold of different things in different ways. So like there are some folks that are just like, really fascinated by like big data, or, how do I create like the best tool for this problem space? And there are others where it's really about like, folks who are just like, I'd say there's some closer to me where it's like really passionate about like social and human interaction and connections, and like how do you do this differently or better, or how do you create a more meaningful way to connect? I'd say there's one person who is sort of really interested in sort of the online offline interaction, and like how do you facilitate offline interaction like through digital. I think it's been challenging for him, but he's also, I think, really passionate about it. But yeah, I mean, the thing that's like almost surprising is that like there's so many paths you can take, and I think it almost none of them are right or wrong, but just like choosing a path, like exploring, and then sort of like getting in that process and that flow state is sort of, I think, what everyone is trying to achieve, but in really different spaces and ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're more like, are you wanting to find like route toward at least a problem space sooner, or are you wanting to explore more and kind of give it space and time, or how do you think about kind of your own journey?
I go back and forth. So this is like a little bit of a tangent, but it will come back around. But I feel like one theme that I've been talking about folks with the past week is like someone recommended the Designing Your Life book, and there's basically like categories of life. There's like work, there's play, there's like health, there's I think love. And I think one thing that I've realized is like I felt like I've tried to like do a good job of like giving myself room to explore in the white space. But then when I really think about it, like I'm not actually playing at all or doing anything where there's not an end goal, where almost everything I'm doing, it's with the end goal of like, I want to facilitate this like aha moment or this spark. And it's interesting because then that sort of has caused me to like challenge my own process, which is like, well, like, am I really creating an environment to do that if I think it is unstructured, if I'm really just like everything I'm doing, it's with this end goal in sight? Is that actually like not constructive and like putting too much pressure? But I think it's a balance. So I've gone back and forth where I mean, we've talked about like trying to like structure the unstructure. Like one thing I'm doing this week is I agreed to a challenge with one of the other founder fellows to like publish a post by Friday on like some space that we've explored, and we're not committed to like that is the space we will work on forever, but it's like publish something that's like a deep dive on a thing. And I think that's like an interesting one because I haven't started, and I'm like, oh god, like I have to like write and do this thing, like this is not a lot of time. I think in some ways it's like a good forcing function to be like, okay, like don't like perfect be the enemy of good enough. Just like go deep somewhere, try it, and like you've accepted this challenge, so like you're gonna do it. But on the other hand, like I don't know, like is that better than just like taking a day off and surfing and just like letting all the stuff that I've been trying to like dive into percolate? Like it's hard to know.
That's what I was going to ask you is why do you surf?
I'd say that truly is one of the things that I do for fun, although I haven't surfed much lately, so maybe I should be doing more of it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that some type of, professional focus emerges out of surfing. I'm not predicting it will or won't, but I think the openness and the play and excitement and energy that you bring to that, I would use that as a barometer for like, am I doing this other thing because it's actually a good competition for my energy and excitement, or am I doing it because I know I'm supposed to be in work mode and I know it's supposed to be a little bit boring or a grind? And are you like detaching the joy that you get from surfing when you think about where you want to spend your professional time because you have some sort of like preconceived notion about how boring it's supposed to be?
Right. It's a really good question. I mean, I noticed that a little bit this morning. Where it's like, I'm gonna like sit down and like do my research to like write this thing, and I'm like, ooh, like is this like a habit that I'm just doing because it like feels like I should be sitting at my laptop like doing my research, or is it like actually like I haven't done it, so I should try and like let's like focus and get down to it. I don't know. Another one is like reading, where I feel like I love genuinely reading. I'm like can totally nerd out. But a lot of what I have been reading, it's very much like they're interesting books, but it's like with the end goal of like, I want to like learn something from this and like have it be applied. And in some ways that's like, all right, it's nice, but it's like taking away a little bit, I think, of that magic of like, I'm just reading it because I want to enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the
problem. Yeah. It's like maybe just creating like the time and space to do something without an end goal, without like an apparent end goal. So just be like, for this hour, like in my day, I'm creating this space where it's like random exploration time, and maybe you'll just practice like doing a headstand for an hour, or like maybe you'll end up like, I don't know, reading some totally random article about like growing sunflowers in Brazil. I don't know, like maybe like the combination of like creating habit, but also having that space be unstructured, I personally also find really tricky. I think we were talking about this with Tom earlier when he came to Lunchbreak as well. Like it's so important for all sorts of productivity and creativity to have that time, but like how do we actually build it in and
Right.
routines?
Yeah. I also think another kind of extension of this sort of like, balance of professional and kind of life, let's say, is inherent when I think a lot of people misattribute building something for themselves because they think it makes a good story. So you may love surfing, and then you're like, yeah, but surfing's not going to pay the bills. I got to go do something else. So then you actually go down some path of trying to like convince yourself of something else that you should be doing because it's
Right.
like looks more professional. And then you probably, I don't mean to, I'm not picking on you. I'm sort of saying, I feel like the pattern I see from or hear from people a lot is like, well, this thing may be kind of boring, but it looks kind of valuable. And so I'm going to do it anyway and just grind through it. And then I think the narrative emerges of people like, well, actually, if I'm creating this thing, I should be telling me that I'm building it for myself. And so you start saying, oh, well, I had this problem that I couldn't run payroll in the way I wanted to or something. And then you're kind of down this path where you have, and I've been down this path myself, so I'm literally, it's not about you. But I think you can be down this path where you're kind of like, well, I think it should be like this. I think it should look like this. And then I'm going to like layer in a story to help convince myself
Right.
that this is a worthwhile use of my time. Now, you mentioned that you love reading. So that seems like, I mean, there's a lot of reading in the world. Like, what are things that you would want to make your reading experience better?
Mm.
Because I think you genuinely do love reading. I don't think you're making that up because it sounds valuable. I think you probably dismiss surfing because it doesn't sound like there's a business there.
Yeah.
but I think reading you probably love with the same similar kind of genuine joy. But then like, what would make reading better for you?
Mm. It's a good question. I mean, it's interesting, like, I'm trying to think like how much of this is like a real problem versus like a should problem, but basically like it's been interesting because I've been reading a lot and I've been trying to like keep track of it, and it's been an interesting mix of like I think like my first preference is like I love physical books, but I like don't love how much space they take up, so I'm like very like hesitant to like buy real books. So mostly I'm reading on this like kind of janky old Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And I like don't use any of the Kindle features. I literally just use it to read. And so
Yeah,
I think there is sort of a gap there of like how do I actually like synthesize and like share like and like almost like percolate some of those things that are coming
yeah,
through. I like have started using Goodreads again just to like track what am I reading, but I like have gone through pretty long spurts of like not using it. And I don't necessarily like stop the flow to like take notes. And I go back and forth on like writing in the books, but I mean mostly in Kindle I'm not using like the highlight features. So
mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's something there around like almost like as I'm reading all of this, like how do I like let what I'm experiencing and like energized by like percolate, and like how do
Yeah,
I like have that both like individually but also potentially like with others, like I don't know, be something where you can engage like one level past the like okay I like read this in the moment level.
yeah,
um yeah, I think that's probably like the biggest thing for me, short of
right.
like a better Kindle, which I don't know. I'm sure there is a better Kindle, and I'm just on the old one.
Right. maybe $100 is all you need to separate you from
Yeah,
the new reading device
right,
you're
right.
dreaming of.
Mm.
But yeah,
Sometimes it's satisfying to find the existing solutions. You're like, okay, good. I don't have to start that company because like
right,
it's already
right.
solved. Amazon has already built a better Kindle.
Exactly.
Um,
Like, all
no, yeah,
right, this is out
I'm
there.
totally kidding, but I wonder when you talk about reading, one thing that comes to mind is have you played with any of these? I know there's really strong reading communities on Rome Research. Have you played around
No,
with any of those?
no, I haven't.
So I I have not. I'm not like deep in the Rome cult, so I can't properly kind of explain all of the benefits, but I have been curious enough about Rome that I have searched around. So start with a Google search and search for like Rome Research Book Club or something, and you can find public Romes that might be linked from like a Reddit thread or something. And there's a lot of the kinds of stuff, if you think about like Goodreads is like highly structured, like here's the book, here's the author, here's the comments box.
Right.
And then Rome is almost like serves some of those needs, but in a vastly different way, much more open-ended and organic. It's just like, here's a blank page with a bunch of people all collaborating and talking about, books, and maybe there's different genres, and, I don't know all the ways they slice it, but I've definitely stumbled upon those through a little bit of proactive looking. And I think there's something interesting. I think there's like emergent behavior there, and maybe those become things that become part of the Rome platform, or maybe you would participate with people and observe other types of emergent behavior around reading that you feel like is not structured and not probably part of the Rome experience, and maybe there's like the opportunity to dig in there. I just like the fact that it's so unstructured, that it doesn't have rails for you. If you're on some strong set of rails, I think it's going to be hard for you to like break out of it. Whereas if you start on a non-railed environment like Rome Research, and connect with people who are also using that same environment, so there's like that interplay, that push and pull, that might be able to kind of help sort of flex your muscles in new ways.
I love that. I'm like Googling it now on the side. That's why I'm quiet. I'm like,
yeah. If you can't find it, I feel like I shared some in our Slack before, so let me see if I can find that, because I thought it was really cool when I saw it. I'll see if I can find the link to what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've definitely heard about that via Rome. I also just recently saw this startup that I linked in chat that might be a little bit more of the traditional approach, but I'm not really sure what they're doing. But if you go on the website, it says, share the joy of reading with friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, I know nothing about this, but...
Interesting.
I mean, I think there's tons of energy for the kind of here's what I read, here's what I'm about to read idea within, that Goodreads, largely serves, but I think people feel like it is, underserves it in many ways, and then also has almost like too much extra cruft, relative, like it's, I don't think anybody would describe Goodreads as a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
It's, passable and large enough that everybody does it. Yeah, it's the Craigslist of books.
What if you had more of like what if you had just an open space online, and everyone has their own space, like each of us has our page, like a URL almost, and you can stick, it's like your bulletin board where you can like put what you have most recently read. Maybe it's like in a Google Docs format, or I don't know how you would do it. But if I'm like, oh, what's Nadia reading? Like, I go to Nadia's thing, and then I see a PDF from, like, Designing Your Life, or it's kind of like this ambient bookshelf concept.
Right.
That's really cool.
That's cool. That kind of reminds me a little bit of some of these decentralized social networking ideas, where you kind of have a place that's mostly like pointers to other things, but it's curated and it's kind of how you want to express in the world. It's not, stuck inside of a rigorous, set of guardrails. But it's kind of a more open approach where you can link things, and like the core ideas come there to see all the stuff that Nadia's into right now.
Like the sci-fi-ish version of this in my head has always been like, what if you could have a blank book and the pages get filled in? It's like e-paper or whatever, or somehow the pages get filled in with like what Nadia's reading. Like I could grab a couple chapters, or you could like page me a couple chapters of whatever you're reading, and then it's like I can actually flip through and like scribble on stuff, and then maybe the text just like erases when I get my new thing. But
right.
I always thought that would be so cool.
It's almost like a new hypertext format, right?
Yeah.
Like reinventing the internet. It's kind of cool.
Really cool. reminds me, I forgot about this until like just now, but one thing that we like went in the Camcord days down like a rabbit hole was the idea of like almost like a digital like whiteboard of where you can like, sort of like over like the like fridge door where you can like leave the note for folks, like people can like add, they can change it, they can remove it, and it's sort of that idea. I think I want to say like Canva, there's some tools that are kind of like this, but like not exactly in terms of how you actually like collaborate and like engage, but that was something that I forgot about until just now, but I remember being really interested in like, how do you sort of interact with that space? Is it like your space? Is it shared? Like that's something that is super interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Have you, I guess, are you familiar with things like, what's that one called? There was a messenger that kind of had a whiteboard thing. I'm gonna need to get this. It's gonna nod at me. Muse, yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
It's like more open space and like send and receive type messaging. I never used it, but it felt more like a space where you and the person you're messaging can sort of like build stuff together and like stick a picture in and like write a text comment or something.
No, I haven't seen that. That's super cool.
So what I was gonna say is I think some of the behaviors on Muse are interesting, but I think if you overlay that with your like public whiteboard idea, Muse is kind of in the context of like a chat channel. So you and I would have a chat channel with each other and we would create banners and stickers and draw things all over it, and it would just live wherever on our like shared whiteboard with each other. But I think you're also proposing this kind of like public whiteboard of just like, here's me and here's what I'm doing right now and here's my stuff, which sounds super interesting. Like, I mean, that's actually a pretty simple in a good way idea. Is like what
it reminds me of like the
public whiteboard concept. Like the which?
The Linktree or Beacons concept, where you have these like URL collection spaces, but those still feel a little bit stiff. It's like you have your Linktree and then it's like a bunch of URLs, but what if it was more like your public Figma in a sense?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Almost like Figma's a super amazing but sophisticated tool. Take like the best of the kind of drawing stuff and turn it into like a very simple mobile app, and I can update it. Maybe I can only update it like once a day, and I publish out my whiteboard, which is like what I've been up to or kind of what I've done in the past day and sort of how my day's going. And maybe it's some collection of like pictures and whatever, but I kind of make a collage and then like that's my thing for the day. And then anybody wants can, when I update it, maybe you hear about me updating it, but
it's almost like scrapbook or journaling apps.
Yeah.
Right? I could see someone building up little pictures of their day, like the coffee and like the article that they read, and then like the workout.
It's like a visual status board.
Right. What's interesting is that you mentioned the journaling apps, because I feel like that's something too where I've thought about. Like, I feel like there are a lot of them out there, and I don't know like how are they doing or like are any of them great. But I feel like that's something that's like also sort of emergent, both in terms of like what am I doing and like what people in the world seem to be doing, where there's like a sense of like wanting a space to like reflect and engage and like share what you're doing. And I have like sort of hacked that with like physical journal. Like I have my like habit tracker spreadsheet that I can post. It's kind of silly. And I know there's like lots of apps for it, and I haven't been motivated enough to like check any of them out, but I'm curious about that too. I'm like a little bit skeptical of like, can you solve for this with an app? But I feel like if you could, that would be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I actually love this idea. I think there's something really cool here. Why not just make it like effectively like a draw something simplicity, and you could paste a URL or something, but you're ultimately like creating a self-expression canvas for the day, and there's no other like complicated network design details, whatever. You're just like doing it with like a handful of people. You don't have like lots of feed systems and lots of extensive creative tools, and you don't have any. It's just like here's what everybody's made in the last day. I like this. If you don't like this, I'm not sure if you like this, but if you like this, I would be interested to help think deeper on it if it's helpful. And if you don't like this, I think it'd be interesting to float with other people. You don't have to commit one way or the other right now, but yeah, this does seem like seems very intriguing.
Yeah, no, I am intrigued. I think I will. I'm still in the like, I don't know. It's almost like the like non-committal like phase where I'm like, I want to like be open and like let it percolate. But it's super interesting.
Oh, and what are you doing with this habit tracking?
This is just like one of my like self-hack. I think someone published a template actually, Mishti, that I copied and like edited, and like it's basically like how I'm tracking myself for like habits and activities, and like it I guess it's sort of like the hub that I've like hacked for like all the different things. So I don't have all the entries, but like one of them is like I write in a Google Doc every day. I have my journal where I write my affirmations. Like I have all these different disparate pieces that are tracked separately, and this is my like centralized, like, you know, each day have I done these things, sort of like source of truth.
And you come to this Google Sheet every day and fill out the next day?
Yeah, and so if you look, I like hid the tabs, but there's like January, February. I've been doing it like every month basically, and then I like iterate too. So like I added the writing one this month, I think. I think I added like I think I changed. It used to be like get up at 7, and now it's like just get up with the first alarm. I have results on that one, but I noticed that one I always failed at 7. So I was like, all right, we're gonna like try to make it more achievable and like, you know, make it feel good. But the goal is basically like healthy habit tracker sort of thing for myself. And
right. I mean, this to me, this is my spidey senses screaming, you actually care about this. Is that true?
I think so.
Yeah, meaning are you doing this because it's a potential product idea that you're exploring, or?
No, actually, this is probably, it's in the like, I guess
I'm
it's
saying, this kind of thing.
Play, but it's a thing, yeah.
Meaning you're not doing it because you think this is like a thing you should do. Like, no, meaning it's not going to advance you professionally or something.
No, it's more of
it's
like
closer to surfing.
Yeah, it's like a thing that I like should do like for myself versus like for anything else, where it's more like I wanted to make sure that I was having some degree of just like balance, and so this is my way of like checking in. And it started off like much more simply of like, am I getting enough sleep? Like, am I eating healthily? Like, you know, am I doing something that's like unstructured and fun, which is usually reading? And so that sort of evolved into this more detailed thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this again, I'm gonna say this is Spidey sense saying like, you actually care about this.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, figure out where these things exist in your life and just only spend time on that. Like, just pour all of your energy into stuff you actually care about. Because look, you shared it, and Mishti said, "I love this. I might make my own now too."
Well, it's funny because it's like it's cool talking about it with you, because I feel like when I'm doing it, it's almost like autopilot, where you don't even like have the like self-awareness to be like, wait, why am I doing this thing every day?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There's some intriguing. I feel like I heard of something someone was making where it was like you could bet with your friends or something, like to put some money on the table with these habit tracking things, so it becomes a little bit more of a game.
Oh, is this like Gympact? Was as kind of
remember, but like if you fail, you have to pay your friends money, basically.
Yeah, that was kind of. There was a gym habit tracker called Gympact, GYM, Gympact, and I think you would put down money, and it would be like an agreement you have with your friends if you like, you know, meet it or not, and people get, you know, effectively lose the bet or lose their streaks, they lose the money too.
Interesting.
But I mean, there is like a whole slew of newsletters and media businesses built around just like, I think of super organizers, or like, I don't know, a lot of the free newsletters that are raking in a lot of money are kind of productivity, self-reflection, focus type things. So, but I haven't necessarily like heard of any sort of product where I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool, and like I would use it.
Yeah.
I've heard of people wanting to build these types of tools, but I think the place it goes wrong is once somebody commits to building the tool, then they like design all the screens and build out a huge roadmap, and then you sort of lose the thing that works.
Right.
So in a sense, if you like this habit tracker idea, don't build the Goodreads version of it, build the Roam Research version of it.
Yeah.
You know what
No,
I
I
mean?
like that point a lot. It's like, what's like the like minimum viable, like almost like not even productizing it, but like how do you just sort of hack this and like
Yeah. I mean, you're hacking this right now, so can you get one layer deeper of hacking? Or maybe,
right.
I mean, a big question I'd love to hear is when Mishti says she might make her own, how does that end up happening? And then do you guys have any collaboration between the two of you? Right? Because I think that's like a question, like that screams, yes, this should be productized if the answer is yes there. But you don't want to force it,
Yeah.
You don't want Mishti to do it because she wants to help her friend Nadia. You want Mishti to do it because she's just like, oh my god, I'm also obsessed with this.
Yeah, it's just tricky because like how much do people actually want to care about this? Like I want to care about it maybe, like you know what I mean? Like I want to have better habits, but how badly do I want that? Is it kind of like, yes, my ideal self would be doing this, but like day to day I would rather just have a happy day and not think so much. I'm trying to think like maybe the Roam Research version of this is back to more of the like your public Figma idea where you would just put, like, you don't have to put down your habits. It might just be like I write down 5 random thoughts I've had that day, but maybe that evolves into like communities of people who use it for habits, and then some other people might use it for like idea sharing for blogs or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Oof. I'm excited. I gotta go, but this is super energizing, and I'm like excited to come back and jam more.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, come back.
Well, we love it. Always come by. We're always happy to have you and jam on this stuff. It's fun for us too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This is super fun. And I'm so appreciative. I feel like every time I walk away, I'm like more energized, and I'm like, oh, there are all these things that I didn't even like think about. It's like, oh.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Great afternoon. It's so good to see you both.
Yeah, great to see you too. Have a good one. All right.
Fun.
Always good to see Nadia.
Yeah. That's kind of an example of like unstructured conversation leading to interesting ideas.
Yeah.
We could not end that discussion.
Right.
Yeah. I think the problem with like these like just like DK's internet whiteboard type idea is that they sometimes feel like they are a lot of overhead. Like scrapbooking is a lot of work if you're going to make a good one. So you probably want to make people feel like it was as lightweight as possible, where it's really like I use my Apple Notes to write down random stuff. So maybe I would just share like my couple Apple Notes of the day. But if I knew that impressive people that I cared about in my network were looking at my thing, then that would build in more incentive to like make it good.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but it feels like there could be nice way to create new things and get it in front of people that you would care for it to be in front of, that would generate new ideas for them, and kind of that back and forth and interplay of like creativity is really what the hallmark of great digital products.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. So we had, I think we basically wrapped on the piece that we're going to chat with Cam about tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
basically wrapped on that. So do you want to call an end to lunch break for today? We'll wrap the session because we've got another session coming up in a few hours.
Yeah, sounds good.
So we'll wrap this one, and then we can. Are we getting on with Cameron at noon or so tomorrow, or
at noon? That's what I proposed to him. Yeah.
Noon. Okay, great. Sounds good. All right, then we'll see you back here at noon.
Sounds good. Bye.
All right.